Yo, 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 welcome to the Theory Podcast. My name is Toby. We have a very special guest today. Molife Kumona is a Zimbabwean native. His most notable achievement is being the editor in chief at GQ South Africa. He spearheads the team there, and I'm just gonna even give him a chance to do more introduction on himself. Molife, for people who don't know who you are,
Oh wow.
who is, how would you introduce yourself?
Wow. I never get to introduce myself except for saying hi, I'm Molife Kumona. This is what I do, or just hi, I'm Molife Kumona, depending on what kind of setting I'm in. I think who would I say I am? I'm a 40-year-old man who is turning 41 in June. I am content a person who loves content strategizing, content creating, content overseeing, and someone who really loves the idea of communicating what's possible in a person's dream and how you can achieve that through telling stories of other people who have achieved those things. So I think, in a nutshell, I guess you could put it that way. I mean, it's obviously I'm multi-layered as a person, but
Yeah.
I think for me that is the core. Absolutely love God. I think that's a thing that a lot of people who know me know. However, I always say this: I'm not like one-dimensional, because a lot of times people think when you come across and you say you love God, then you're like this rigid person. No, I'm not. I mean, I love God, but I also love God in my own expression. I'm who I am. My love for God doesn't make me like a prude or someone who
Or
you can't
judgy.
be yourself or
Yeah,
judgy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, okay, appreciate that. That was a beautiful intro, and it sparked a lot of other questions from just what you said. But I'll get to that shortly. I always like to start the podcast by getting people to rate how they are on a scale of 1 to 10,
How am I in terms of what?
in terms of everything considering your mental health, life. At this
Um,
very moment, how are
at
you
this
out of
very
10?
moment,
Yeah.
at this very moment, I have a slight flu, so probably my nose is a bit blocked. But outside of that, I would rate myself an 8 out of 10.
Perfect.
An 8 out of 10. I think
That's
I'm
strong.
in a good space spiritually, mentally, physically, because obviously with the flu it's not the best. Financially, yeah, in quite a decent place. Relationally, so I think I'd rate myself an 8.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because saying "How are you?" it's almost
Mm.
like a greeting. People
Yes.
always just automatically, "Oh, I'm fine."
Yeah.
It doesn't go into detail. So let's go more into detail on that 8.
Yeah.
What would it take to get to 10?
Uh, well, first, if this flu goes away, it'll put another point higher. Um, then secondly, I think if a lot of when most of what I'd like to happen in terms of the stuff that I pray about, I think of, and I don't think I'm not meaning the bigger things, but I'm just talking about right now. If the people in my life are happier, if the people in my life's dreams come true, if my friend gets that job, if my sister gets that thing, or if my brother is less stressed, or that would get me to a 10, because I think those are the types of things that drive me, that make me happy. So when we flourish together. When we're having a good time, we're having a good time together. So that would take me to a 10, definitely.
You mentioned about content. You love creating content, and I feel like you're in a space where you're kind of like traditional media, GQ magazine, but now with social media, there's so much content. We have a overconsumption of content or
Yeah.
overmaking of content. So, do you think that everyone should have a platform in this day and age with creating content? Does that ever irk you that anyone can I can have a mic and have a platform?
I think, listen, um, I think everyone should have the access to having a platform, whether or not one has a platform or not. Uh, might be debatable. It's a yes and a no at the same time. No, in that there's some people who use their platforms for hate, or to bully people, or to say things that are not cool, things that make people see themselves as less than. So those are the type of people who perhaps should not have a platform, shouldn't have a platform. But then at the same time, when you see people who have platforms that are also pushing for good, or are also pushing amazing content, because sometimes it's not always about good and evil, but sometimes it's like, this is a really great picture, sometimes this is a really great plug on the latest maybe skincare products, fragrances, fashion. So I think it's a yes and a no aspect, but I think the ability to have should be open to everyone. And then when you get that platform, then it's your own responsibility. And I think this is our responsibilities as the audience who follow these various people on these platforms, to sometimes go like, okay, maybe we're going to mute that one because you're a bit problematic.
Do you ever find yourself as the editor-in-chief pushing what people want to see as opposed to what people might need?
So that's a twofold question. I think twofold answer. I think so not necessarily pushing what people want to see versus to what I believe. So because I've got a team, right, and I have actively tried to make sure my team is not filled with people who are alike.
Okay.
So I also understand that being the editor-in-chief means I'm a brand custodian, but it doesn't mean only how I view the world matters.
Right.
So when you have a team around the table, sometimes the team will give an input on different things, and then it's my job to sift through those things to realize, okay, cool, that's an idea I would never have thought about, but it is on brand. Or that's an idea that I wouldn't have thought about, or I thought of, but it's not on brand. So I think it's a combination of both. It's a combination of being able to be in tune with where the culture is, and being a taste maker as a brand, just pushing it a bit further. So I was listening to something recently that says media doesn't tell you how to think, but what to think about. So it was quite interesting when I heard that, and I started replaying it like, yeah, that's true actually, because if we tell you like this is the latest thing, we're telling you what to think about. We didn't tell you how to think, or you know what I mean? So I think for me, that's how I view it.
They dictate the subject topic, right, but not your opinion on that topic.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, because so many times you hear things like, in the Black African community, let's just talk about America, for example, reality shows. They say they portray black people in the worst light, being ratchet, throwing drinks on each other. And then the director was like, if you guys stop consuming this content, we'll make another content.
Yeah.
If you guys consume meditation and holier things, we're gonna make those things. But because you guys are shooting up the ratings on ratchet stuff, that's why we create more ratchet things.
Fair.
So do you ever like for example, we all know sex sells. Do you ever, or have you ever found yourself in pushing what you know will sell as opposed to what is pure to yourself and what is better for the environment?
So I think when you get into the position of being a brand custodian and editor-in-chief, you vacillate, or you work between two mindsets. You work between the bigger picture, and you work between what is right for the brand, whichever brand you're leading. So you definitely need to get in eyeballs on your content. You definitely need to get in money from advertisers. But at the same time, it's the how you're going to do it. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to over cannibalize your brand, whatever it is, whether it's sex, whether it's with whatever different content, to a point where people are talking a lot about it, but then it loses the essence of why people are coming to the brand. Because what I always say, even to my team, is that the brand stands there for a particular reason. So when you do various things, understand that even as you're growing as a brand, you're not moving far away from the brand, because the brand is the main thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even before my time, there were editors who came before me, and even after me. So, but I think the most important thing is just to understand that the brand, that's the USP. That's the brand.
I have something to debate you on,
Yeah.
right, Molife. You said one of the best advice you ever got was an editor gave you an advice, an editor mentor, and they said that don't force anyone to tell your story,
Yebo.
that the audience can see a forced story. What I want to debate on is when I started living my truth and being transparent with myself, it frustrated me when others weren't, when they had stories that could help other people. Because I grew up in the church, pastor's kid, and there will be things that I'm like, why isn't like my dad talking about his struggles? Why isn't my mom? Why is everything so private, in the church? So when you said that, I was like, no, F that. Everybody should. Like, I can be the only one keeping it real. You understand what I'm saying? So is that what you meant, that, hey, if you know someone is going through a struggle and you know that this story would help somebody else,
Yeah.
you don't want to force them? And do you think that's okay?
I think, listen, I think it's I don't think anything in life should happen based on being forced. I don't think so. I think speaking your story, whatever story you have when you're ready, has more weight than speaking it under duress. When you speak something under duress or under being forced, you might magnify certain things that were not there. You might leave important aspects because you feel you have to do it. But I feel like when you're ready to speak your story, it comes off easier. And I think some people will never be ready to speak their stories. And I think we need to get to a point where we're okay with that. We're okay with, like, you know what, maybe this person is not okay with telling the story. But over time, when they see other people who say, yo, it took me 20 years to speak about this, now I'm speaking about it. So I think I totally agree. Like, forcing people to tell their stories isn't great. But I think sometimes what I found over the years is sometimes people come and they don't want to talk about certain things, but based on how you create a safe space for them, they go there. Not because you force them, but they go there.
Like, one, as you were just speaking, something that came to mind was my older sister went through several miscarriages. Thanks be to God, she has 3 children now. But she went through miscarriages, and it was like, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th miscarriage that she found out that my mom also had miscarriages, before she had us. And, we all know in the family, African family, you find out things on the deathbed, where your grandma is like, let me tell you this. So that's been so detrimental to like the black family for years. So I guess, are you intentionally trying to change that, with the conversations that we probably have, in private or publicly?
I think that we as black people think that the lack of openness only happens in black communities, and I don't think that's true. I think there are a lot of non-black communities, whether white, whether Hispanic, whether Indian, who don't speak about a lot of things based on how you were raised and how you grew up. A simple example is some families don't tell each other, I love you. They don't. They don't say, I love you. They don't say that. But over time, maybe you get into a relationship with a partner who is making you comfortable with the fact of saying, I love you. Then you become less rigid. But it's a matter of not necessarily the black families, but I think it's a matter of people and how they grow up and what you're used to surrounding you. One of the biggest things that happened to my life that I absolutely love was before my granddad passed away many years ago. I remember one day I just looked at him, and in that moment I almost have a 360 turnaround of how I looked at him. I just looked at him like, this is just a man who is wanting affection, because my grandmom had passed away and he had a new wife, and not everybody in the family was like very excited about that. But like, and she was younger, so obviously, family. But I looked at him, I was like, this is just a man who just wants companionship. I removed my granddad label, because my granddad label would mean, how dare you get someone who's younger than you. That's how I would look at it. That's how everyone else would look at it. It would mean, how dare you, at your age, are you really still getting busy? Because that's the insinuation.
Yeah.
But when I stopped looking more dimensional, it changed the way I see things. And it's a very hard thing to do, I'll be honest with you, because even in relationships, sometimes you have your partner in this box. This is the box you put your partner. And over time, what I try to do is engage it differently. And it gives you a certain level of empathy, especially even in arguments. Where when you're arguing, right, and you just stop and you listen to what this person is saying. Maybe this person is screaming out whatever, but at the core of it, they're saying, you hurt me. And it's such a different experience when you look at someone and you hear someone saying, you hurt me, than how dare you do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's how we are able to get our elders, I'm an elder as well, I'm 40, to be able to open up more when we give them grace. Because they didn't know about these things. They don't know about talking about their feelings, whether men or women. They don't know about that. So I think that's what leads to a more open, evolving community, whether black, white, Indian, Hispanic, I think, or Chinese. Yeah.
Michelle Obama always says that everyone you meet has some context to their story that you don't know about.
Yeah.
So give them grace.
Yeah.
Because if you know the context, you might be like, oh, I see it now.
But and I think it's and I love that, right? And I think as human beings, man, I don't know where we get that. I guess it's when we're growing up. When you see someone, you automatically think they're like this, they're like that, like that. And then when you get closer to some of these people are really, really just not messed up, but just like they need help. But some of them, as you get close, you realize that actually, yeah, maybe they hurt you. Actually, maybe you don't know what you're doing. And that's why maybe you're a bully, or maybe that's why you're like this. Actually, maybe you're quite insecure. And that's why you are acting up this way. That makes you seem aggro or whatever.
So your editing career started in the church, as most of our talents start, in the
Yes.
church.
How do you
Singing,
know about that?
everything. I did my research.
What a wow. Okay, yeah, it
I had
did.
to
It
come
did.
prepared.
It did.
But you started profiling and documenting people's stories in the church and things that they've overcome and how they came about to overcome it. What are some of the things that you had to overcome to get to the 40-year-old Molife now?
Oh wow. There've been quite a bit. I think one of the first ones that I can think of now, without being emotional about it. Not that I don't cry, I do cry. No, I do cry. I do cry. I don't believe in the aspect that men don't cry. But I think one of the things that I had to overcome was my mom passing away when I was young. I think I was 16, 17.
Sorry to hear that.
No, time you find a new normal. But I think I had to overcome that because I think for the longest time, my life as a young man revolved around the idea of making my mom proud. So that was what my life was. That's literally, it's like, oh, when I get here, I want to do this for my mom. Then when that is taken away, you're almost like in limbo to say, okay, so now what's my purpose? So what do I do now? You know what I mean?
What's my motivation?
You know what I mean? What's my motivation?
Yeah.
I think that was one of the hardest things I've had to go through. But it taught me compassion, right? But at the same time, in that time, I don't think I knew that it was that hard. Because, I just went to autopilot, started studying a lot, doing all sorts of things. So I think that's one of the hardest things I've had to go through. I think also, at some point in my career, finding out that perhaps my race was an issue. And it not clicking. You know, when something is happening, you're like, what's going on? And then later on, I keep telling my friend, and I remember my friend going like, but you're young and you're black. I'm like, yeah, you're young and you're black. Yes, you're young and you're black. I think he said it the fifth time I got it. I was like, I get it. So I think that was a bit of a very difficult time in that at some of that time, I then thought, based on what was happening, perhaps I was incompetent. And feeling incompetent is a really horrible feeling.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think for me, Those are like some of the two things I can think about. What I've realized though is you have to work a lot harder, and I totally agree with that. But I've also gotten to a point where all I've known is being black. So it's stopped being like a thing for me. You know, obviously you will see as a black person, either in corporate or in different spaces, you'll see how things happen. But like for me, it stopped being a thing. It's more like, yeah, I'm black. So like it's like I didn't wake up yesterday and became black, or like 20 years ago.
Right.
I've been born black. I'm a black man, and this is my experience, and this is the reality of it. I don't want to be any other race. I'm not looking to be any other race, and that's what's up.
Yeah.
And that comes with such an okay feeling, because then I don't want to be anyone else. And I think also then other races, even when you interact with them, because what happens with being in a situation where there might be some kind of race relation issue is then you become hostile to the other race.
Yeah.
You know, it happens to everybody, and it's not even an age thing. But once you, which is a work in progress, once you work on the fact that I'm black, this is me, there is, like, this is who I am. The other people happen to be different races. Perhaps some people would treat them differently, but that has nothing to do with me. It's got to do with that person's ignorance. Yes, if they come at me, I will put them in their place very nicely, but I won't walk around feeling less than because I am who I am.
Is there a purpose which you like opening the doors for other black editors or other black people in these spaces to come and to have an easier way in than you have had? Or do you feel like, you know what, I had to go through the struggle, so you got to go through the struggle as well?
I don't believe in because I went through it, you also need to go through it. One, two, I think, so I always give this example, right, that growing up in early, say maybe when I was 16, 17, 18, what I used to consider as good looking, if you thought good looking men was Brad Pitt or Tom Cruise, if you thought good looking women, it was Jennifer Aniston, Pamela Anderson, Julia Roberts. And I mean, they are still very good looking. However, as a black man and as a black child, I never got to see myself there. So my job being in this space is to also help other young black women and men and other to see themselves. Because once you see them yourself, you're able to realize what's possible. So for me, it's not necessarily an idea of like I'm only pushing black people because whatever, but for me it's actively going like, okay, spaces were predominantly white or predominantly other than black. What I'm doing is I'm putting my stamp on it so that my son, my daughter, my cousins, whoever comes after me or whoever looks at what I do is able to see themselves. To be like, I see myself through this person. But also when we tell the stories, we don't tell the stories really based only on race. You know, so even if I tell a story about, say, a white photographer, I'm telling their journey, and as a black man, I can still relate. Because if it's a man, we're relating, man. Yes, we're different. Probably you were 25 steps up the ladder. I'm still on step 10. But in terms of struggles, in terms of mental health, in terms of self-doubt, insecurities, we're really pretty much the same.
And it's so crazy to like a white person listening to this, because I grew up around white people in Ireland, and they can't fathom the idea that you're treated differently in business because of the color of your skin. Like they think, oh, maybe you're playing the race card or whatever. Can you go more into detail? Like, is it that there are these meetings, elaborate meetings being had to just stifle black creatives and to, throw them back?
Listen, I think it's not, there is direct racism or prejudice. Then there is indirect racism and prejudice. Years ago, one of my mentees said something that I still hold true today. And I don't know what was happening when we were speaking about it. Then they're like, imagine you are a young Devon, a white young man from Bishop Courts, since we're in Cape Town. What was your first reference of a black person? It was the helper who was helping at your house.
Wow.
It was the gardener. When you grew up, that was your first reference. And as you grew up, it's the driver, it's the whatever, it's the petrol attendant, it's whatever, right? So already, because that was your reference, and not by choice, you grew up, you already in some way, because I've seen you for the first 5 years of my life being quote unquote inferior, that's how psychologically I've programmed you to be. So when I get into spaces with the varsity, with the wherever, in my mind, from an early age of when you're born until 5 or whatever, I've always seen black people as inferior. But if you don't engage those particular thoughts, you're not able to land in a place where you're like, okay, you know what? Based on my upbringing, based on how I was raised, this is how I see something. Same thing with patriarchy. If you grew up as a young man seeing women only taking care of you, cleaning after you, doing all these things, automatically you believe women are lesser than.
I kind of have a feeling
You believe
boss
that. Exactly.
telling you what to do.
Yeah, so then by the time you get to the office and a female boss is telling you this, you're like, but you look like Tembisa who cleans for us at home, or you look like, you know what I mean? So it's about learning to unlearn all those things that we learned. And I think the more we're able to engage that, the easier certain things become. You know what I mean? The easier certain things become. Because if we run away or tiptoe around that, then we have a huge problem. We have a huge problem. I mean, I'm black man, grew up like largely my life in Zimbabwe, grew up with aunts and cousins, like taking care of us and all that. And I mean, I own that a certain level of how I show up in the world is very patriarchal. I own that, but I have to constantly work on it. Because you know why it's like that? Because I grew up thinking, how? If you're a woman, why are you not cooking? Why are you not doing this? And it's a sad thing at 40 to say it, but it's stuff that you have to constantly unlearn, because that's what happens. So similar, I think, to some cases of racism where people have innate racism or innate you're lesser than me mentality without actively going to look for it and being ugly about it.
Wow, that's just opened my mind. That's very true. I want to ask you something about your mom, right? Passing away. Because I feel like I've had two signs as of late. The last guest I had, he spoke about his mom passing away. And I've had signs of I should appreciate my mom more. But I'll be honest with you, right? Respectfully, my mom, you know how you said you're a Christian that's not judgy? My mom is the opposite. She'll have a problem with my hair. She'll have a problem with everything. And whenever you have to like hang out with someone who's just going to call out your faults or what you're not doing right, obviously you're going to spend less and less time with that person, whether it's family. And I love my mom. One of the prayers I even, like if a genie came to me and was like, Toby, what are your 3 wishes? One of the wishes will be, how long will my mom be here for? Because I want to know, like, she's like, that would be the most crushing thing to me. But I don't always like her. But she's my mom, you know, like I love her regardless. But have you ever had I don't know how close your relationship was with your mom, but let's say there is even someone like me that's like, we know as men we should appreciate our mom, we should call them, we should love them. But you don't know the type of mother I have, you know. She's not abuser or anything, but she can just make you feel bad about yourself. It's always, Papa, what are you doing with your life? What is this? So how does someone navigate through that? Because I want to appreciate the people who don't have their mothers here anymore. I want to appreciate my mom. That she's still here and she carried me for 9 months. But it's like, the woman is just like...
I think you know what? So 2 things. I think most of the times there's a saying that I like, someone is doing the best they know how, the best they can. So with our traditional parents, they believe scolding you will make you change your behavior. Literally. I can't coddle you. Because if I cuddle you, then you're going to continue with this mess. Whatever it is, if I see it as mess. And I think in such situations, change the approach. So get used to how she is. And if you get used to how she is, she won't really affect you in what she says.
What if it feels like you're abusing yourself being with that person? Let's take my mom out the equation.
Yes.
Are there some family members in your life that maybe it could be a grandma, grand aunt, that it feels like every time I got with you, it's like I'm abusing myself or I'm letting you abuse me?
I get you.
Yeah.
Have you had the conversation, though?
Yeah.
No, but have you had the conversation fully? And what I mean by that is this. Have you, if your person is not a one you can talk to, have you written to them? Have you written an email to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is how I feel? But also, sometimes some people are just, and so I don't like the idea where people go like, oh, toxic people, walk away. So I have two faults to that. When you've tried the best you can, then you can let it be. But sometimes you need to understand that some people are doing the best they know how to do. So you don't know the type of trauma that your mom perhaps faced that you have no idea of, that makes her be who she is towards you. Does it make it right? No, doesn't make it right. But then you need to vocalize where you're coming from, and not even from a place of when you're annoyed, but one time where you can possibly write a text message or an email and say, listen, this is how you make me feel. Then you release that. And then I was reading, I saw a video where someone was like, some people you can love them from Tsanin. Tsanin is a place in Limpopo, very, very far. You're like, I can love you from there. You know what I mean? So I think sometimes that's the case. But I think when it comes to people in your life, people do the best they can. You need to vocalize how you feel with them. And sometimes don't vocalize it in the moment where this person is there and whatever, and you end up going to butting heads. And sometimes you might find that the two of you are similar in some regard, and that's why you butt heads a lot. Do I have family who I have kind of distanced myself from? Yes, I have. And I think for me, it's simply when people have amnesia, where someone treats you a certain way, right? And you don't have the audacity to apologize.
Right.
Then now we're fine, and then you raise it and someone like gaslights you. For me, I don't like things like that, because I'm just like, why are you gaslighting? You can just say you're sorry.
Yeah.
And I think the more I grow and the more I become older and the reality of people die comes in as you get older, that's when you understand that as the adult, you need to set an example. You need to apologize. You need to say sorry. So I think there are people who I've distanced myself from. It's not bad blood or anything, but it's just like, I'm not about to be here where my cup is not filled.
Right.
I'd rather go somewhere else where my cup is filled. I don't hate you. I have nothing against you. But life is too short. So I can't spend it here like trying to get you to get me or understand me. But at the same time, I also won't be toxic towards you.
Yeah, I haven't tried the letter thing. That's interesting, or the email. I should definitely do that because, maybe she'll just have more time in reading it and digesting what I'm trying to say.
Because remember, an email or a letter is so, you take your time, you write it. And we're not going back and forth. Yeah. I'm just telling you what I think. You are reading it there in black and white.
Yeah.
What you decide to do with that is on you, but I've told you.
Yeah. And I will say, credit to, I've even been thinking of this, that our strict ways have kept me from doing certain things that other peers of mine did. When I look at myself, that, why was I able to stay away from drugs? Why was I able to stay away from this? It's because of our strict ways. But I do think that at some point in life, you have to give your child the permission to be themselves. You have to give them back to themselves. Like, you raise them, but now it's like, who do you want to be? And I feel like she hasn't done that with us yet.
But how was she raised?
I guess. But we can't cycle.
I get that.
Problems,
I understand that. But if you don't know that there was a problem with how you were raised, how will you know that there's a problem with how you're raising?
Whoa.
You get it? I think that's how we always have this. People call them generational. I won't necessarily call them curses. Generational behaviors is because if my mom was ugly to me,
Mm.
as let's say as a girl, my mom was ugly to me because of whatever, then when I have a daughter, I'll be ugly to my daughter because that's how I learned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Until the daughter goes like, mom, actually this is off. And it might take me a long time to learn, or I might never learn at all. But then that person, that's why things like counseling as well help. Things like letters help. You know, I know of people who've had to write letters to their parents who passed away because they were so hurt and they didn't speak about it when they were alive, that I have to write this letter to release you because I'm carrying you with me because you've hurt me so much in this.
Yeah. There's a story that I like once. It was like, uh, okay, I'm going to paraphrase and ruin the story. But basically, a husband and the wife were meeting for family dinner. And then the wife made a cake, right, in a small tray. And then the daughter just goes, Mom, we have like a big crowd coming. Why are you making it in a small tray? And she was like, oh, that's the way my grandma made it, you know, or that's the way my mom made it. And then when the mom came, the wife asked the mom, Mom, why did you make the cake in the small tray? She was like, that's how grandma made it. So grandma came. Then I asked grandma, why did you make it in the small tray? Grandma goes, the oven wasn't big enough.
And that's what it is. And
now
that's
we
what
have
it is.
bigger ovens, and if the daughter hadn't asked, it's like this generation of making in a small tray, thinking the cake is gonna taste better, or for whatever reason, it was just learned behavior. So it's like sometimes you just gotta ask why. Why do we do this?
Why?
Yeah.
And why is important?
Yeah, for sure. But yes, speak about your spirituality. You said you're very big on God. What is the reason for that?
Wow, my spiritual. So, I think I. So I grew up in the church. Grew up Catholic. At some point, I asked questions in the Catholic Church from my different nuns and whatever. They didn't answer me satisfactory, or maybe I was just quite young at that time. I don't know. Then I changed and I moved to Pentecostal church, a bit of the Holy Ghost vibe. I enjoyed it, but during my years, I don't know how old I was, probably, but after 18 or 19, you know, in the church, if people think like you're one of the people who are serving maybe in the dance group and wherever, and then you're being mischievous, there's a girl you're hollering at or whatever, usually they tell you to like take a sit while you fix you put your affairs in order. That's what happened to me at the height of me like really enjoying being in the church and everything. Then I was told to take a sit, you know, because you were flirting with Spanish, it wasn't working. Then that really crushed my spirit, because first of all, it wasn't true, you know, or maybe it wasn't true, but I also thought you could have handled it differently, you know. But that's how I felt.
Yeah.
But what that period of time did for me was the best thing ever, because instead of seeking church, I now seeked a spiritual relationship, like a relationship with God. So instead of it being about the church, it was no longer about that. It was about working, as the Bible says, working out my own salvation. And when I finally got back to church, I was sure, I was so sure about my salvation and so steady in my faith that had that not happened, I don't think I would have gotten there. Had that not happened, I would have been some of those people who perhaps praise the men and women of God more than the actual God.
Oof.
You know, and this is reality. I mean, I know a lot of Christians don't like to speak about it, but sometimes it's one of those where it's like the praising of the men and women of God becomes so much higher that if you're my pastor and you're not happy with me, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to pray today because God is not going to listen to me. But no, I don't think so. So for me, that time really, really strengthened my faith. When I came back, I was solid. I was on solid ground. So from then on, I've been going on and on and on. And I just think like my life has been like just grace, 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 grace from then.
With that statement that, you know, we praise the man of God and whatnot, so there are a lot of stories of men of God being exposed for cheating on their wife or whatever, or being false prophets and this and that. So a lot of the times the congregation will be very disappointed, and a lot of people will stray away from God because it's like this man of God, with all this wisdom about the Bible. How could he do this? How could he fall like this? Do you think we should have higher standards for our parishioners, or do you think that we shouldn't, like you said, put them on a pedestal?
I think we should have respect for them. We should have we should love them. We should honor the gift that God has given them. I do also think that we should understand they're human beings who have their own human failings. And I think from understanding that, we're able to engage things differently. And it's such a hard thing because, when you are the vessel that God has used to change somebody,
Yeah.
it's so hard when you falter, because then you're the vessel. Like, I listen to your music, I listen to whatever.
You
So I
almost
think
brought me
it's,
to Christ
what I
in a
mean?
way,
It's
yeah.
such it's a hard thing, but I think we should give them the similar grace that God gives us. Give them a similar grace, because you don't know their walk. There's the walk that we know when they're on stage or when they're ministering to us in song, whatever, but we don't know the walk behind it, And I think it's such a hard thing. It's a very, very hard thing. And I know, there are a lot of men and women of God who've been, mostly men actually, who've been exposed, so to speak, on the various things that they've done. And yeah, it's shocking. To me, I don't condone it. I don't say it's a great thing. But I also sit there and go like, these people are human. So we can only put you on a pedestal to a certain extent. I have a thing that I said once and I was in a car with one of my colleagues, and I said that I respect people. I respect everybody. I respect people. I respect people in government, people like in leadership positions, people who have a great influence. But for me, there's a certain equalizer where you don't know the day you're going to pass away. If you don't know the day all the time, or you can't calculate it forward, we're all just the same. For me, that's how I look at it. And it doesn't mean I disqualify what you've achieved. Doesn't mean I disqualify. What it basically means is like there's that human element to all of us where in that regard we're all the same. And for as long as we're all the same like that, you're not Christ who raised from the dead after 3 days and how. Yeah, we are like, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I guess the whole purpose of Christianity is forgiveness, right?
Sure.
They accepted you into the church when you came with all your sins, and they forgave. And it's like, why don't we extend that forgiveness to the leaders of the church? But to some extent, I understand someone being like, "Ah, but they were faking. They didn't expose themselves. They didn't tell their true self, So I don't know. T.D. Jakes has been a very huge, powerful, like, man of God to me. I listen to him religiously, and I think it would hurt my faith if I found out something that he wasn't who he portrayed himself to be.
I think I think you need to work on that. And reason for that is T.D. Jakes is also a man. He's also a human being.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for me, it's important to work on those things so that I can still respect you, but I still give you room to be human. It doesn't mean I'm setting you up for failure. It doesn't mean you're a certain way. So, yeah, you need to work on that. Because I think, listen, I don't ever want to put someone on a pedestal where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm so disappointed. Yeah, I'm disappointed. Your own parents will disappoint you. What more someone from TV or from, you know what I mean? Yes, and we respect them. I have no disrespect for them.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, we need to work on that.
Yeah. One of the staple pieces and magazine pieces that GQ is known for worldwide is Man of the Year.
Yeah.
So I know they have their own definition of Man of the Year. Maybe it's looks, maybe it's influence, power, whatever it may be. What do you think young men should consider when trying to be the best man that they can be this year?
So I think, first of all, Man of the Year with GQ, what it does is It recognizes men and women who have been impactful in culture and in different industries throughout the year, and sometimes throughout decades, especially for the Icon Award or like for the Lifetime Achievement Award. So that's what we recognize. For young men, in terms of being the man of the year, I think it just depends on what it is you want for yourself. Because I think one of the most important things that any one of us can do for ourselves is to ask ourselves, what is it that I want for myself? There are a lot of things that we're supposed to want. There are a lot of things that we're told to want. There are a lot of things that we're told we're missing out on. But what is it that I want for myself? And if you can sit down as a person and be able to structure what you want for yourself without pressure from the outside, without a stress of some sort, then I think, and you achieve those things, then you are the man of the year. And but when I talk about what you want for yourself, I don't mean like just being a toxic man or toxic masculinity and all those things. But what I mean is like deep down, what do you want? Do you want to be a great dad? Do you want to be a great boyfriend? Do you want to be a great partner? Do you want to be a great businessman? Do you want to do better in terms of your health? Do you want to contribute more to the community? So that's what I would believe could qualify as a personal man of the year, because I've achieved what I want to achieve, not what I was told to achieve, not what society told me this is what you're supposed to be, but what I believe resonates with who I am.
Yeah, well, that's so powerful. Some of our dreams are not even ours. It's collected by somebody else that made it look fancy.
That is
or
true.
whatnot. So there's something you said, right, on your Instagram story highlight of lessons that you have learned.
Oh, wow. I was like, yeah, a while ago.
You said, it's 2019. You are not your job, a career, or the money you make. You are way more than that. Your job or career is a great thing to push and always excel at, but don't let it define you. If you allow these three things to define you, when they don't work out, you will be lost and feel worthless. We can do a whole TED Talk on this, but for now, let's hold on to that. So maybe we'll do the TED Talk now. But does it ever get to you when people introduce you and highlight only, editor-in-chief of GQ magazine? Who were you before that, and who are you going to be after that as well?
Does it bother me? Yes and no. Yes, depending on what setting we're in. Because I'm not about to just have drinks with friends or like come in my position as Molife, the man, and you introduce me as a GQ editor. I'm just like, what does it have to do with anything here? So that's when it bothers me, you know. And also when people attach so much of who I am to that. It's just like, no, guys. I mean, like one of my friends says, know when to get off the stage. When I finish with the job, I go home. I'm just myself in my real life, as I call it. I'm just myself. No one is checking for me to say, you are the editor. What? My family is not sitting there. Oh, you're the editor. Yes, they're happy. They're proud of it.
Let's introduce
I mean, imagine. But they are proud of what I do, but no one is checking on me like that.
Right.
So, and no, it doesn't bother me when it's in the right spaces, in the right context.
Gotcha.
You know, it doesn't bother me at all. Who was I before? I was, and still am, just a middle-aged man. Because I was about to say a young man. I'm like, yeah, I am a young man, but like when you're in your 40s, you're like kind of middle-aged, which I really love. I like being in my 40s. It's really stunning. But
let me rephrase it. What were you proud of before and after that? Because sometimes people, I've heard this about athletes, and sometimes you cover sports stars, they say once their career is done in sports, they don't know their identity anymore. They don't know who they are anymore after that. So what were you most proud of? Because you do have the GQ editor-in-chief on your bio, so it is something that you hold dear to you. But what were you proud of most before that? And after that title is gone or you retire, what will you be proud of after?
I think what I am most proud because it's a It's a if it was a board with two blocks of before and after, it would be something that's on top of it because it just runs through. The fact that I have the audacity to follow my dreams and wherever they lead me, I think I'm really proud of that because I think through God's grace, and I don't say God's grace for the lack of acknowledging my part, because I think one of the things that sometimes switches people off with spiritual people or Christians is that they're like, it's just saying God is not saying what the reality of it. But through God's grace, because I know my life, I know my skin, I've been in this body, I've been on this journey. But I think what I'm most proud of is having that audacity to follow my dreams, having the bravado as well to take on roles where I'm like, I haven't done this before, maybe let's try. Having the audacity to believe that I can. And when I was faced with doubt, and when I'm faced with doubt, being able to crank myself up and say, you know what, you got this, let's do that. I think I'm really, really proud of that because those are moments that happen with yourself, by yourself, in your mind, in your spirit, where there's situations happen, you're like, maybe I can't handle this, or could I go for this? But being able to go like, actually, you know what, maybe I'm not sure, but I'm going to take a stand, I'm going to do it. So I think that's what I'm mostly proud of because I've been able to continually lean in that grace, have the audacity to follow through what I believe was my path. And even when my path came through, I'm like, but I didn't ask for this, but I guess it's leading me to that path. Let's go, let's see. And even in self-doubt, I've been able to encourage myself, been able to say, you know what, let's push it through, let's get through. So I think that's what I'm mostly proud of for myself within the whole before and after.